Welcome to this Monday edition of The Chiefs. And with us tonight are Luchi Cruz Valdez, the head of News 5, Ana Marie Pamintuan, the editor-in-chief of One News. Ladies, good evening. And coming online as well will be Robbie Lampay of One News. It's the 23rd of November, and as everybody knows, especially journalists know, it's the anniversary of the Ampatuan massacre.
Yes.
So we will have one of our guests tonight later in the show to talk about an update on the case. Of course, it's past the RTC, but it's already up with the Court of Appeals and possibly going to the Supreme Court later on. So it still has a long way to go, and there's a second wave of charges that had been filed against some perpetrators, and we'll have some updates on that as well.
Yeah. Well, I think that's the news for today. And so it's only fitting that we talk about it. So we might as well start, Ed.
No, but I think we're starting. We're starting off with another topic.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yes. Later in the show, we will have one of the private lawyers of the victims of the massacre, the attorney Nina Santos.
Okay.
But before that, we will be having with us first on the show, of course, Paulo Alcazar, an architect and an urban planner who is one of our favorite guests in the show. We always have him coming back to the show to talk to us about all these things happening in Metro Manila and other parts of the country that we never seem to learn from. So let's bring him in. Hi, sir. Good evening,
Hello, Paulo.
Architect Paulo Alcazar, and thank you for joining us.
Good evening, Ed, Luchi, and Ami.
Good evening.
Hello.
Good evening, sir. Good to see you again. Sir,
Yes,
as I said, it's always fascinating to have you in the show with sometimes you bring props along.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's too bad I can't be there
for
in
us,
person.
for those of us who are not technically savvy. I do remember your batya props. You showed us what it is in Metro Manila that makes it so vulnerable to flooding. But anyway, we always have fascinating discussions with you. We've had that in the last 2 years. But I'm wondering lang, all these discussions, all these ideas, all these recommendations, have any national local agency taken any concrete, tangible action or steps to address these constant problems of flooding? I mean, from your view, meron bang,
Obviously not.
Wala talaga.
Obviously not. Yeah, we
Ako
very.
ang tanong ko, may pag-asa ba eh? May pag-asa ba, Paulo, na talagang pwede kang manirahan doon ng may peace of mind na hindi ka na ulit babahain ng ganong level, ha?
Well, ang suggestion ko nga na para sa bagong department na isasagawa, hindi Department of Water, ang suggestion ko is Department of Memory, because after the floods go, we forget about the floods. So I think a Department of Memory will help us all. It's either that or
what do we have
Department of Underwater.
I think, no?
Yes.
What do we have to keep in mind ba? When you say, just facetiously, assuming that a Department of Memory is approved and
we forget.
Oh, what's there to keep in mind, Paulo, in order to avoid a repeat, a perennial repeat?
Well, the biggest problem really is this joint between the regions, the jurisdictions of government units and government bodies versus the jurisdiction of nature. So I sent over a few maps of Cagayan and Marikina Valley that show that the administrative or political regions are defined by different requirements other than. So this is the relief map of northern Luzon showing the Cagayan Valley, and you have the Sierra Madres on the right and the Cordilleras on the left. If you go to the next slide, can we go to the next slide, please? We show the Region 2, which is Cagayan Valley, and the Cordillera Autonomous Region on the left of it. But the actual framework for the reasons for the floods is the next slide. Can we show the next slide, please? That's the watershed of the Cagayan Valley. So the watershed is 28,000 square kilometers, And one of the problems in addressing this finding solutions to this is because the action is taken are usually segregated by region, and Cagayan is a different region, Cordillera is a different region, but the watersheds, uh, the 20 major watersheds in the Philippines cross political boundaries.
Yes.
And so it's very difficult to implement anything when the frameworks of governance and the paths of action are segregated, are not the same as the framework of nature. So we don't follow nature's framework. We follow our political framework. So it's very, very difficult, and that has been brought out in numerous studies in the last two decades by several consultancy groups for offices of government like the DENR and the DPWH. In fact, 5 years ago, the DPWH, through its Office of Water Basin Control, the Water Basin Control Office, did a study of the Marikina River Basin, and the same problems came out, which is the fractured nature of political jurisdictions and the institutional weakness and no channels for
just for clarity, sir, when you talk about
reconfiguring.
kasi you were showing the maps kanina just for clarity kasi some of us are using phones so we can barely see. You're talking about watersheds upland. Ibig sabihin, Cordillera watersheds na walang control ang Cagayan Valley, which is a different region. Parang ganun.
Yes. The watershed has an upper level and a lower level. The water flows from up there and goes down to usually the valleys. Just like the Marikina River, the source is the Sierra Madres, which go up to 1,000 meters in height. While here in Cagayan, you have on the left, which is the Cagayan Cordillera Autonomous Region. The mountains there go up 2,000 meters. But you also have the Sierra Madres, the northern Sierra Madres on the right. So what contributes to the flooding of the area, because we have denuded both mountain ranges, is both mountain ranges. And so it's not just the Magat Dam and the overflowing of that dam and the Magat River system is only about 20% of the total annual flow into the valley. The rest of the water comes from the rest of the mountains on the sides of that watershed, which is on the left in the Cordilleras, beyond the region of Cagayan Valley. So maraming reklamo yung Isabela versus Cagayan, pero may reklamo din ang Cagayan Valley Region 2 versus CIR. So nagtuturoan and nobody is responsible, and that's why you have all of these proposals for new departments and additional bureaucracy.
But precisely, Paolo. Yeah, precisely, Paolo. I mean, I think point well taken, or maybe we should say point sadly taken. Our political structures do not follow what nature should have dictated. I guess that's one way of putting it. But reconfiguring the political structures, especially at the local government, is probably a harder task. It's probably a more impossible task than catching up to our forestry and bringing back our forest cover and so on. But I mean, given politics right now, isn't that precisely an argument for creating new departments on the national level, where you can maybe try to impose something on top of the already gerrymandered politics that we have?
My suggestion would be to strengthen existing
like the DNR.
agencies.
Yeah.
Exactly, DNR.
Oh, diba? I mean, yun na nga
again,
doesn't the bureaucracy already have those agencies precisely to unify what would otherwise be separate political entities, no?
Yes,
because they share common resources and hence common concerns.
Okay, we're trying to address again the symptoms of the problem, which is the floods, which is coming out from what we failed to do, which is to watch over our forests and ensure that it does not get cut or deforested again. And you go to the body that's supposed to watch over. We have a NIPAS and National Integrated Protected Area system, But we don't have enough forest rangers, and there's not enough funds, and they cannot watch over our forests, which are continually being cut, where there's continual illegal logging, quarrying, etc. And that's the source, the main source, really, of all of the water that comes down. And unless we stop it at the uplands, everything, literally, all the problems will flow down. So one has to.
Yeah, you mentioned the following nature's framework. Given the political situation, siguro if we manage to coordinate all these actions, what interventions can you suggest
Are we talking?
Along the line of nature's framework to stop the flooding? Sa Cagayan muna. Sa Cagayan muna.
Sa Cagayan muna is all of the studies in the last few decades have pointed to reforestation. One, pointed to putting up detention ponds at several elevations. At the upper levels, you can have detention basins with some dams and going down. You have a series like in Marikina. The suggestion was to put a detention basin between the Angat and the lower reaches of the Marikina. But that would, of course, entail the government having to buy up enough land to create a detention basin and a smaller dam below Magat. The alternative would be smaller dams above Angat. So if a lot of these areas you have the dams, you can add more basins and dams above. You can add more basins and dams below, so that at each elevation you're detaining water, so it doesn't go down
All the
very
way
fast
down.
or immediately. Yes. So the thing is to detain the flood waters, because we have eliminated the natural system of forests, which used to detain all of the water before it came down. So we're paying for our sins by having to toss billions of pesos in this very hard structural system, and we have to do this. Otherwise, we have to wait 30 years to reforest all of our mountains, and it will. The long-term solution is, of course, reforestation and management of our upland resources. And the short term would be we have no choice but to throw money at all of these hard engineering solutions. There's
a suggestion. Nakapareho daw sa Fort Bonifacio, you build an underground water catchment. I think it's similar to the polder, no, in Netherlands. But you need a lot of pumping stations. Feasible ba yon? Kasi hindi naman naalis dyan sa mga Provident Village yung mga tao. You've heard them, they've been interviewed. Ayaw naman doon. So, given these realities, yun ang suggestion binabagit na why don't we build yung water catchment underneath na maraming pumping station. Is that feasible?
Yes, there are 3 scales to address the problem of flooding, because flooding occurs at 3 scales. One is at your neighborhood or district level. The second scale is at your town or municipal level. And the third level is the entire watershed, which Cagayan is 40 times the watershed of Marikina. Marikina watershed is larger than the entire Metro Manila. So in the individual areas where you have localized flooding, yes, you can have BGC. That's the Marikina River Basin watershed, which is larger than the entire Metro Manila. And that all of that, you note that colored area, since we've denuded it, all of the water flows down and affects over 1 million people immediately. So you can address urban areas and urban flooding with detention cisterns like the one in Fort Bonifacio, or at a smaller scale by detaining water in your individual roofs and houses. And then you have the town or city level where you could also have more parks with detention basins inside. But once you get to that, to this scale, which is the watershed level, you see all those blue lines that go up the mountain. Those are the rivers. And what can be done is to detain at each elevation in several steps before it goes down and contributes to all of that flood water coming down into the Marikina Valley. So there are 3 major types of flooding and 3 major scales at which all of this can be addressed. And that can be the local ones at the city level can be addressed by the LGUs. but the watershed is much too large and costs much too much money. It has to be a national effort. It has to be national government, because no one has enough money to throw at this thing except national government, and so it has to be a reprioritization of our budgets.
So, Paolo, as you said, the long term is really reforestation, heal our land, and all of that. Short term, as you said, is we don't have a choice. We do need to invest in some engineering interventions. Where would you put between the immediate and short term, and then the long term solutions? Where would you put this whole issue as well, and this reality of settlements in the Philippines? Everybody's living along a danger zone. So what is the matter of settlements?
Yeah, I was about to bring out the issue of putting people in harm's way, and that is the purview of land use planning. Our problem is that our land use act is not yet passed, and the other problem is again a jurisdictional one. The government has taken some sort of a right direction in consolidating all of the housing and building bodies into the new department. This already after the fact. They put up the Department of Human Settlements and Urban Development. It is the responsibility of that body, consolidating the efforts in housing, which is part of the problem, to also look at where and how settlements are put up, and how existing towns and cities in the Philippines should go, which direction they should go, and guide urban development so that we don't put people in harm's way. The only problem is a lot of the settlements in harm's way are the low-income settlements.
Yeah, but how do you motivate that? I mean, at the level of people, diba? I mean, talking about government is one thing, but then eventually you end up with having to deal with real people, real families who have invested in their land and so on. What's the best way to motivate people at our real level? Do we motivate them by markets, or do we use police powers at the local government?
Yes, it's the police powers of local governments that need to be more effective, and that is tied up with the requirement for all LGUs to have comprehensive land use plans. The only problem in larger areas wherein which things like the Marikina watershed lies is that it's a metropolitan conglomeration. So there is no synergy in the CLUPs of the 14 LGUs that are covered in the Marikina watershed. Nobody, and you have the NCR plus Region 3. So again, the two different regions. The coordination is supposed to be by region. If you read the law, it's regional cooperation, but a lot of these efforts are aimed at economic and planning and development, not natural, not disasters or safety. So again, it goes back to the hard pill that we have to swallow. Eventually, the 18 regions of the Philippines needs to be redrawn based on physical geography, not political geography.
Baka kailangan na mag-federalism talaga. Hindi, joke. Anyway.
It's just we redraw political boundaries all the time. It's called gerrymandering.
Yes.
And so why not for a good purpose rather than a not so good purpose, which is political?
That's
the good purpose is saving people's lives.
Right.
There will be no change in the budgets. It's just putting the money where it needs to be put, and making sure that the police powers are effective in regions that are now congruent with natural regions. It's a hard pill to swallow, but what are our choices? Our choice is to repeat this every 10 years, at least the major floods. But that cycle is shortening as we speak because of climate change. That's the other reality.
Okay, but absent that, Paolo, and if we were to follow your recommendation to build different, ano ba yun? Iba-ibang levels of catchment.
Three scales, yes.
Yes, the three scales. What
it's been suggested,
region would you prioritize? I mean, given the limited
Yes,
budget.
well,
also,
it's where
yes.
most people are. I mean, Cagayan Valley is huge, 40 times Marikina watershed, but the population affected is 3.4 million. In Metro Manila, well, NCR is 15 million. So
Yeah.
there are more people in harm's way, although the area is smaller. So if you do triage, and if you just have so much money, of course, the other people in the other regions will complain. Then you put money where the most people are. I mean, more people were affected in the Marikina Valley, which is smaller, than in Cagayan. But of course, it also affects agricultural production. So it's a matter of that's beyond my pay grade in how to allocate budgets. But somebody has to make that decision. But it should be a triage to where most people are. So you throw the money. And the compromise would be in the Marikina Valley to try and put in some smaller detention areas, which are easier. I think they had a small water detention program, and this intervention is much faster than doing major dams, which are 3 to 5 years and cost billions of pesos. So if you had only a sub 1 billion peso money to throw at it, then it would be really to fix up all of the to desilt the rivers, to keep the drainage ways maintained, and then to put in this smaller detentions. But again, it is already, the studies have already been made. It's just that when it comes to the implementation, the other problem is that even if we have assistance from overseas, then the problem is it seems that we lack the capacity to put up the counterpart funds, and lack the capacity to implement things that are cross political jurisdictions, or where institutions are so weak, nobody knows who's actually going to implement and eventually maintain, which is a problem. Like with Manila, the implementation of hard structural interventions is DBWH, but the maintenance is MMDA, which is, as everybody knows, is hard pressed already to do what they all are already trying to do. So institutionally weak all around. Several studies have already been made. The plans are there. We don't know who can institute all of this. We don't know which department is in charge. And after it happens, everybody just points fingers and or throws their hands up in the air, or we meet like this and you interview me.
Nakaka-discourage naman yan.
Urban Planner
Okay.
Paulo Alcazaran. Sir, we'll just go into a break, so we hope you can stay with us.
Are we taking a break?
Yes.
Yes, we
No,
are.
sir, no, sir. We'll just go into a break. We hope you can stay with
Okay.
us.
Sure.
We'll be back.
Welcome back, the Chiefs. We're still speaking with urban development expert Paulo Alcazaran, a favorite guest of ours here in the Chiefs. Paulo, you dabble a lot. Well, no, you don't dabble. You're an expert in urban development and urban design, but you also, you look at it at every level, from the macro down to the micro. I've seen your renderings, your drawings, your musings on what, not just what cities, not just what towns, not just the country, but even what houses might look like. Now, on social media recently, daming mga nagva-viral na, oh, itong isa, ginawa niya yung garahe niya, lumulutang
Yes.
yung platform ng kotse niya. Yung iba naman, oh, ang galing, tinaas niya ng 3 stories yung bahay niya. And this is all, we understand why people are fascinated by this. But do you have any concern that focusing on those things and those things going viral could be leading us in the wrong conversations about how to fix our country?
Well, you can fix first those things that you can control, and those DIY ideas, like I posted and several others have posted, is something that you can build. I mean, you can harvest the rainwater from your roofs. You can build if you can build higher. So here it's actually, this is humorous, but at the same time it's serious. We were in Tacloban a couple of years ago after Yolanda, and we suggested flood escape stairs instead of fire escape stairs, so you can climb up to the top and be rescued. But houses on stilts is really how we used to build all of our bahay kubos, and we should revisit that strategy. So these are things, the conversation can be at this scale. But of course, now, because our population is 110 million, the context is different, and the problems that have to be addressed are at various scales and at the biggest scale. So we can address things at various scales, but each one of these problems is complicated, site-specific, and difficult. This is the easiest way to understand why it floods. Our cities are down below, our forests are denuded, and once our mountains are bald, then all the water flows down. So that's why we have to build those detention pots. I think I have a sketch that show Marikina. I think the next one, please. So there's a before and after. Now that's my suggestion for tricycles, and you can have the roofs as the boat. And this is the barangay.
May helicopter yung bahay.
Yeah, barangay hall is 4 stories. Again, you should build your buildings above historic flood levels, and this is done in Indochina and some of the countries there where they have flooding problems, and their multipurpose centers are 2-3 stories high. And so you have to spend the extra money, and some of these buildings are in schools, but the schools will make use of this. So there are ways of innovating and creatively using or co-locating facilities that are used during normal periods and during periods of disaster. Because we're spending of course, we spend a little more money, but at least we're prepared. So the conversation should be taken at each level, but we have to address everything in context.
Paulo, some LGUs are now undertaking river reclamation. I mean not reclaiming the river, but clearing the waterways to restore the rivers, to restore waterways. Some LGUs are doing this now in Metro Manila. How helpful are they? Kasi over the years, we built residential and mixed-use development over all these waterways. No? Ngayon, ginigiba naman nila, and just to restore all these bodies of water.
Well, I think
considering na wala na nga mga puno sa paligid natin and we have climate change.
Okay, some of this is really frustration on the part of LGUs, and they want to be seen as doing something. And dredging or desilting the stretches of the rivers within their of course, the waters are not really theirs. It's not national, no? But doing this will help some. The problem is, and trying to bring back the natural course, the problem is that these rivers their water finds its own course. So this is the reason you need easements. Although our water code stipulates a very small easement, and it should be relooked. Our easements for urban areas is only 3 meters. Our easement for agriculture areas is only 20 meters, and our easements for
hindi pa sinusunod.
And for forest area is 40 meters. When they were doing the plans for Quezon City 60, 70 years ago, the easements were up to 100 meters. The recommendations of the recommendations of most modern planning strategies are between 20 to as much as 100
Wow.
meters. And this is being followed now in areas like, say, in the Mississippi, in Houston, in areas that have been flood prone. So the Army Corps of Engineers are making these easements very wide, and the cities and governances there realize that the only way they can deal with this perennial flooding is to have very wide easements. Now, of course, that is very, very difficult in Metro Manila because 1 meter away you have your informal settlers or even your formal buildings. And so you have to push the problem elsewhere. That means if you cannot expand wide, you have to make sure it's deep enough. But how you cannot ensure constant depth if it's constantly silting up from the denuded forest uplands. So everything's connected, and it's a vicious cycle. You try to address something at the end when the source is really on from the top. And so it's, what is the word, Sisyphean. You push against the rock, and it will just come down on you again because nobody is taking the long view and putting the much larger perspective for everyone to look at. And nobody looks at the maps, like the maps I've shown you. Filipinos and a lot of Filipino politicians are map illiterate. They cannot read the maps. So how can scientists and planners like myself explain these things if most of your audience cannot understand the abstraction of a map? This is how data is communicated, and maybe media's goal should be to help communicate this and educate Filipinos again to understand maps and how to interpret what the data scientists will tell us is going to happen. I think that's important.
Paolo, I mean, if you were a dictator with control over the entire budget, then you'll have, so budget is not a question, power is not a question. If you were a dictator and you wanted to implement just two infrastructure projects for Metro Manila, what would you invest in?
In Metro Manila?
Yeah, for Metro Manila.
Oh, for Metro Manila, well, immediately if it's infrastructure, which is a transport system and housing, and a close third would be, especially with future pandemics, is our hospital or health infrastructure. So to anticipate future pandemics, it's health infrastructure. To anticipate also pandemics and any other is a transport system that has options for non-motorized. That's specific to Metro Manila. It's very hard to hypothesize.
Where does that come in?
Flood control.
Flood control. Where will that come in?
You cannot control floods. You cannot control floods within Metro Manila. The floods come from uplands. The question specifically was in Manila, and you cannot.
No.
If you're a dictator of the country,
Metro Manila.
if you're a dictator of the country, you had power over everything.
You see, Metro Manila. The Marikina Valley is only one side of it. The rest of the water comes from the Central Plains and from the other side, the mountains of Zambales and the rest of the Sierra Madres. So all that water is coming in. So the flood detention and the flood mitigation starts at the perimeter of Metro Manila. And one shouldn't forget that we have the uplands going up to Tagaytay. That also contributes to the flooding of all of the areas, all the way to Parañaque and Pasay, which is sinking. So our problem is from all sides. We are the north and south Camanaba and Parañaque, Pasay, all the way to Cavite is sinking because of groundwater extraction. And that means if you have a flood, it will be deeper every year, year on year. And then we have climate change. So it's even if I were the dictator, I wouldn't know where to start.
No, but if going back to your original proposal, Paolo, how would you reconstruct the political system so that it becomes more nature friendly in terms of the infrastructure that you will probably need to build in order to prevent calamities of, Ulysses magnitude?
I believe because of the difficulty of reconfiguring at the smaller levels, say cities, towns, even provinces, the nearest option would be to reconfigure the regional frameworks, the 17 regions, and that can be tweaked to come closer to what the ridges and the reefs situations are. So the watersheds we can reconfigure the 17 regions. And again,
So it will
because
be one. So it will be one political unit.
Now there are 20 about 20 major watershed basins.
Okay.
So it's close to the 17 regions. So one could go through an exercise to see how they could fit better. Again, everything will be a compromise, but so long as people are aware that this is how we need to reconfigure our regional boundaries so that resources can be plugged in where it will make some sense. I was in a workshop last year down in Visayas, and we were talking in this provincial group, and they were throwing a lot of solutions. But I know two of us from UB were pointing, look, your problem comes from the uplands. And they said, sir, wala kaming magagawa, ibang probinsya yan. So that then we told them, you would never solve your problems. And if we translate that to the rest of the Philippines, that's why we're constantly fighting this uphill battle. It's because of we have the money to throw at things. It's just that the political boundaries hinder us. So that's how we could.
In this reconfiguration, po, so should the watersheds be under the control or some sort of control by the people downstream? Yun ho bang ibig natin sabihin that there should be some sort of the people downstream should have some sort of say in what happens upstairs?
Yes, but there are also people upstairs. But the people upstairs have to take responsibility that how they are controlling the areas upstairs will affect the people downstairs. But if you're in one region, then it's all for your good, because your economy is dependent on being a regional economy. Because again, the allocations for budgets is also regional. The physical framework planning by NEDA comes through down to the regional level. You have an overall, and NEDA has to reconfigure its priorities that is not just on economic frameworks, but in also considering the natural frameworks, which is a problem in all of our economic planning. We don't look at the realities of what's on the ground and the problems, which is a public administration problem of governance. So a lot of disciplines have to come together to figure out how to best reconfigure our frameworks and how to best get governance and the police powers that are in that hierarchy. It's a complicated discussion on hierarchies of towns, cities, and provinces.
Yes, sir.
And this,
sir, just to zoom in.
Yes.
Just to zoom in, sir. For example, sir, Cagayan Valley. It's one big basin. Right? It's one big basin on all sides. Actually, on three sides.
Three sides. Yeah.
Sierra
Downstream
Madre.
is it flows out of towards Batanes. So you have yeah. So it's a U, and it exits 500 kilometers to the north. So it's a huge area. And the physical reality.
Mega region.
So will that be one region? Ganun ba yun?
That should be one region. Or at least there should be some institutional framework that puts the entire region within its scope. Otherwise, and that's where some of the studies and the people making the studies have suggested things like river basin commissions. But the only problem is we have commissions left and right. I mean, even your barangay has a commission. So what chances are there for anything to happen? It should really be within a hard framework which is funded and which is top of mind of economic and political planners, that this is the reality. We have to manage our country this way. It's the physical realities imposed by climate change and things like pandemics that are going to rule us from now on. It's not it's all politics and show business, but our future is really determined by climate change.
Paolo, in Metro Manila, there's a plan kasi a massive reclamation project being planned in Cavite. Will that aggravate flooding? No, yung merong malaki talaga. Will it aggravate flooding in Metro Manila?
Yeah, short answer, yes. Reclamation is never a good idea. And the drivers of reclamation is the fact of very bad land management for development. And this is where the Department of Human Settlements and Urban Development should step in. You cannot blame real estate developers for wanting to reclaim, because these reclaimed areas are contiguous and you only have to deal with one entity rather than 1,000 people you have to buy your lots from. So it's market driven. So if you take that away and you manage your land, so there's a regimen of land use planning that allocates areas for development into housing and mixed use, etc., then you can make sure everybody makes money from the real estate point of view. But then all of the things that people need, like housing, commercial areas, industry, is addressed. But there's no one looking at that. Everything is a low-hanging fruit. Everything is market-driven. So that conversation is very complicated. But no, yes, reclamation is a bad idea. So and we don't need that complication, because you lose your habitat, you exacerbate flooding in certain areas, you change patterns, natural processes. The lesson to learn is never mess with nature, because she'll bite back and worse. So within the frameworks of natural processes and the natural lay of the land, we have lost our ability to read the lay of the land and to understand natural processes. And these are the things that create the disasters that we face in regular cycles.
So you think, kasi sinabi ng Presidente, he wants a moratorium on reclamation, except tuloy-tuloy pa rin tong reclamation na to in Manila Bay. So you think a moratorium on reclamation projects in Manila Bay should be implemented, should be enforced?
Yes, it should be enforced. We pay too much a price. The immediate benefits will be localized maybe to the LGU or the tax base and to the real estate, but everybody pays the price. We all pay the price of someone reclaiming the land from the sea. We all pay that price of people building settlements up the hills when we should not. So the price is paid by us and us, the taxpayers, because it's our money that's being thrown to try and solve all these problems that we've let other people do.
Okay, now Paolo, going back to your question nga about, we need to figure out even the political structures here. But let's assume, I think it's not far-fetched to assume na mahirap gawin yon. Diba? I mean, the gerrymandering at that level is not gonna happen. What's possible given the political structures right now? How high up, or who has to crack the whip? Does it have to be Malacanang? Does it have to be the president? Or are things possible on the level of governor to governor, for example, all the provinces, let's say, along the Cagayan Valley? What's possible? What have we seen around the world as models where they didn't have to rejigger the local political structures?
Yes, of course. I mean, it comes down to since our politics is politics of personalities, then it's a matter of governors and mayors getting together. There is a league of cities. There's a league of
city mayors,
and there's a league of vice mayors, and there's a league of governors. But you can get together. So it takes leadership, and once the leaders in Cagayan realize that it's a common problem, then they can get together. It can be done through back channels or through pop-up structures to address. It does not need the president. Although it would, leadership at all levels is always wanting in the Philippine setting. So we're still waiting for those leaders to come and lead the way.
Plus, you change mayors every 3 years, so
well, that's a problem. Yes, of course, and I don't know how to address that one. I mean, we tried to address the presidential term by giving 6 years, and it hasn't solved much of anything. But yes, the continuity in programs is something that needs to be addressed. And if you want to really go radical and look at governance structures, there's another way of governing cities and metropolitan regions is by what's called city managers, which are positions that are based on professionalism. So you have a cadre of professional city and town managers that can ensure continuity. You still have the elected officials for all of the pump and the need for selection. But the city managers, since they are professional, this is where public administration comes in. And public administration, College of Public Ad in UP, there's lots of radical ideas. We need to expand the discourse and find new ways of governing ourselves, because the last 100 years we've seen no workable or sustainable solutions in terms of political frameworks. I'm not trying to blow up the conversation, but it boils down to that. At least we're talking and trying to figure things out, right?
But really, Paolo, there has got to be short-term solutions also. I mean, given the realities of
the
politics,
short-term solution is to buy a raft for your house and life jackets. That's a short. I'm serious. I mean,
then the infrastructure.
We are at that point.
Infrastructure.
Short-term infrastructure is what
For example, I said, building higher dikes, perhaps, or
yes, of course.
Know, but yeah.
Yes, of course, there are short-term solutions, and that's already been suggested in these various studies, like in Marikina, is to this detention basins between the dam and Marikina itself. So it all depends on how much money the government can throw at these detention basins, because you will have to consolidate the land for the basins and the little dams or levees. Yeah. The levees are on the side. Of course, all of that has to be done. So the thing is, you have to do it before the next one hits. So
Paolo, I mean, given all of this, what would you say to Filipinos who are looking at, let's say, Jakarta? You know, when the government says, let's just move the entire capital out of Jakarta, let's just establish an entire new capital. What do you say to Filipinos? How should they appreciate news like that?
It's problematic. The thing about Indonesia, it has oil money, so it can throw trillions of dollars into building a new capital, just like Malaysia did with Putrajaya. We don't have that money. I mean, New Clark City is a good idea for setting up a secondary place to have urban development, and it can be a second fallback to Manila if we get, knock on wood, into a calamity. But we cannot rebuild the capital. We have just too much money, too much invested, and we don't have the money to rebuild elsewhere. We really just have to hunker down and find solutions, short and long-term solutions to all of the problems. But first, we have to understand the source of the sources of the problems in terms of flooding and of course governance. We have
Provident Village.
Provident Village. Oh, I got
very short term, syempre. Pero di ba, you're looking at communities that are in immediate danger, and they're consistently in danger.
Yes, constantly. Every turn where the Marikina River meanders, the tendency is, of course, they will be inundated by flash floods, which is a big problem brought about by expanding urban development and lack of porous surfaces. Everything will flow, and so you have the flash floods. So the only thing that can be done is to make sure the embankments are higher than what they have now, and they're already doing that. Like the JICA project is not yet complete. So once they complete that, there is some mitigation of that problem, and then the rest of it, as suggested by the various studies, is IEC, information, education, and communication. That means we have to continue funding things like NOAA, so that we have the sensors that are working and we know when this will come. And then we're so connected in social media that the minute somebody has a new girlfriend and one of those stars, it's seconds before you know it. We can apply the same speed by telling people that, look, the water's rising, and then you have to get out of there, and you have to at least save your property. So Project NOAA is important. We have to fund things like that. We have to ensure that communication, early warning is embedded in our DRRM CCA initiatives. That's what we can do, and that costs much less than a lot of the harder structural or infrastructural mitigations like dams and detention basins. We can do that. So get people out of harm's way. Of course, getting people out of harm's way for informal settlers will entail us building better refugee centers or multi-purpose evacuation centers. I think that's one area where we can already throw money very quickly. You can build one in 3 or 4 months, and it has to be a 3-story to 4-story refugee center with gang toilets and facilities for especially in pandemics, for social distancing. That's the reality of our future. Yes, it can be done. There are short-term and long-term solutions.
How people are talking about improving our water harvesting facilities. Is that similar to what you're saying, yung infrastructure intervention? Or is it something more than that? Something more than catching the water and storing?
Yes, you catch the water that falls on your roof. That's one. You catch the water that falls on your, like this. You catch the water also that falls on your lot, on your compound. A lot of the largest compounds are things like military camps and golf courses, but they are not constrained by law to retain the water. All of the water flows out and into our canals. So what has to be put in is a green and blue law that requires us to plant more trees and vegetation to absorb rainwater, and a blue law where we need to contain within our houses, our homes, our complexes, our compounds, so that we keep the water within our property first before releasing it to our overburdened drainage system. In our streets, in other countries, in other cities, they build rainwater gardens or rain absorbers. I think I have a suggestion there, the SpongeBob.
SpongeBob?
Yes. Can you show the SpongeBob concept? And this is really to sop up excess rainwater. And it's a drawing of SpongeBob underneath the road. But this is, in fact, is a working system. There are several ways you can do it. But what we can bring in is like parking lots that have porous surfaces. So all of the soil underneath the parking lot, our big parking lots, can help absorb rainwater. So all of this is done in Singapore. All the parking bays are perforated. Along roadsides, they're shifting from hard concrete channels into what is called bioswales. So instead of concrete that just flows the water quickly and contributes to the flash flooding, you have infiltration and water detention even in the channels that accept the water. These are interventions that can be...
They're doable, huh? Yeah, they sound doable.
They are doable. They are doable.
Aren't we working in them?
Well, there's a resistance from institutions like the DPWH, which is used to just pouring concrete everywhere, because that's their default. This shifting from hard concrete solutions to drainage to what we call bioengineering. There you go. So that's actually there are several systems available already in the market that does the same thing as that SpongeBob does. In fact, there's one in Pasig that does that. So you can have all of these things underneath are what is now very pervious paving or non-porous surfaces, and this can absorb a lot of the rainwater. It will not solve everything, but what we need, just like fighting a virus, is a cocktail of solutions, and all of this can help mitigate the problem. So rainwater harvesting, bioswales, this can all be done. This can all be done. Yes?
Eh, wala pang ang sewage eh. I mean,
No. We're already recommending it for our clients. All of us in the environmental planning, the landscape architecture, and the green architecture movements already know that this is a menu of possibilities in terms of site development. It can be done. It's just the resistance of a lot of the clients and contractors. There is some extra money involved. But once we get to the economies of scale, say if there is a law that requires our parking areas to be perforated, then it will drive the cost down to what the cost is now. It's just a matter of enforcing. It's a matter of economies of scale. But the rest of it, like the rain gardens, we already built one in Boracay when we were assisting the DPWH. The regional director there was very open. And we were able to build rain gardens along the main Spine Road. It's there. It's a proof of concept that it can be done. A lot of the Iloilo Esplanade incorporates a lot of this green initiative that we did. So again, it has been done, and it has been done within budgets already allocated. You don't have.
And you're saying, Paolo, that it's not necessarily the cost of the new technology and the new material that keeps the price higher. It's economies of scale, as you said. And when it comes to economies of scale, new policy and mandating laws can actually instigate the economies of scale that can bring down those prices.
Yes. So it's convincing governments and the contractors that service them, and there are just a few of them, to change their mindset and adopt all of this, because it will help mitigate the problem, really, and very doable. So Holcim Lafarge has already started offering porous concrete, which is it looks like ampao. So you can pour this ampao-like concrete on a driveway,
and water will seep through it.
Water will seep through. Of course, you have to add additional subsurface drains so that the water that gets absorbed either goes to your landscape area, so you don't have to water your plants, or eventually goes to a drainage system. Again, all of these initiatives, as designers and planners, we know how to do it. The resistance is, and a lot of our clients will say, "Oh, mahal masyado, it's too much trouble. We don't want to take the effort." Again, because they're thinking only of just their own properties and not the greater good. So you do have to have the building officials of LGUs capacitated to appreciate all of this and be able to enforce. Like Quezon City has a green initiatives already, green building, and so does Makati. But they have difficulties with individual developers. But eventually, everyone will start to learn. The larger developers, the more conscious of environment ones, are already adopting this. It's a hard road to travel, but we're taking the steps. It's just that we are overtaken by things like Ulysses every year or so.
So yung ampao concrete does not sacrifice rigidity or strength.
You can only apply it in certain areas. So if it's a driveway, it has to be a little thicker. So there are adjustments that need to be made. But it can be made once you understand where it can be applied. And so parking lots themselves don't need to be as strong as the driveways. So there are things, and again, all of these are already known by us designers and planners. It's just the resistance from clients or governments and people like the DPWH. Again, regionally they differed. We've had great success with region is it 6 or 7 with Visayas because they've seen what's been done in Iloilo, and so once they see it work, then they can adapt it very quickly. So it's a hard task, but we in our associations are pushing for it.
Okay.
Right. Okay.
Urban development expert, architect Paul Alcazaran. Always a pleasure to have you with us on the show. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Salamat,
Salamat.
Paolo.
Keep safe.
Thank you, sir.
You too.
We were supposed to have Attorney Nena Santos,
nga
one of the private lawyers of the victims of the Ampatuan massacre.
Ngayon.
Unfortunately, she's having problems with her internet because she is based in southern central Mindanao. So medyo on and off ata yung internet niya ngayong gabi. So unfortunately, we can't have her tonight. So we'll try to have her again some other day.
Putin.
All right.
Oh, okay.
And that
Okay.
will be all. Cue.
And that'll be all for this Monday edition of the Chiefs. We hope what was discussed here will keep the conversation going. I'm Adling One News.
I'm Ami Paminton of the Philippine Star.
I'm Luchi Cruz Valdez of News 5.
I'm Robbie Alampay, and we are One News.
Related to COVID-19. He said this week the president